Guys, this week I'm going to reshare a conversation with you that I had with David Moscovitch, who is a world-class figure skater, and he was able to get a silver medal in the Sochi Olympics, which is a very high achievement. And we had an unbelievable conversation. I remember we were so passionate that actually after we recorded this podcast, we actually went for lunch and continued talking because Dylan has an unbelievable knowledge on mental strength, and he was basically sharing all of it in a podcast and way more. So I really hope you guys enjoy this one because I definitely did myself when I had a conversation with him. Enjoy it. Anyway, man, I'm really stoked to talk to you because you have so much knowledge in terms of your actual experience going out there and growing up as a elite athlete and going through all these experiences. I want to start with something I read on you on Wikipedia. And you tell me, and we're just going to test.
We'll see if it's true.
We're going to test credibility of that website once and for all. You stepped on the ice for the first time when you were 13 months old?
That's correct.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Can you tell me, do you remember anything?
My parents are crazy, you know. They just they were like, start training. You've already taken a few steps. It's time to start your training. Okay. No, my mom's from South Africa.
Okay.
My dad took her out on an outdoor rink to, teach her to skate. Mm-hmm. And they weren't allowed to carry me on the ice in one of those, like baby backpacks.
Okay.
Unless I had skates on. So I just started walking. They got me those little bob skates. And they put me down and I started walking around and I just wouldn't get off the ice. And then I guess I always wanted to skate. And so they kept taking me to outdoor rinks and I would cry when I was outside because it was cold. And then they'd bring me inside. I'd cry because I want to go skate. And then eventually someone told my mom in a public rink, there's an indoor rink nearby where they have public skating. Mm-hmm. And I went there and actually a coach saw me just kind of zipping around the ice. I must have been about 2.5 then.
2.5.
And she asked my mom if she could give me a 15-minute lesson. My mom said sure, and that was how I started skating.
That's crazy. 2.5. We're talking about how people are starting tennis when they're 4, or like, oh no, it's too young, what are you doing? And it's like 2.5. Do you remember yourself on the ring that young, or
yeah, kind of. I remember myself around that young. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always had to be pulled off the ice.
What do you teach when you get a kid that young? Do you remember what you were
One
doing?
One foot in front of the other? I don't know.
I don't know. It's like because you can barely walk at that age.
Yeah, yeah. And even now, I teach a little bit of can skate here and there, and it's hard to teach that level. There's not much you can do. I mean, for me, my brain works in a very technical, analytical way because I'm used to addressing and breaking down the most intricate parts of the sport. So when I'm working with a kid, I'm I don't know, stand up. Put one foot in front of the other. What's wrong with you? You get down on your hands and knees and you teach them how to slide their blades and then, make snow so they can learn to stop. But I think it's just encouragement at that point.
Yeah, for
how
sure.
to fall down and stand back up is like lesson number 1.
Classic. Yeah, let's start from when you're like very young.
Yeah.
So when you were young, it was coming from you, the desire to go on the rink and like, hey, can I do more and more? It was never your parents.
This is the story I was told, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I played rep sports until I was 13. I did rep soccer, rep hockey, rep baseball. I was very involved in sports. I just kind of always identified with being a figure skater. Something I guess it was the jumps and the technical difficulty of it, and then paired with the artistic component of it. I'm naturally a bit of a performer, so I got to live that aspect of my personality.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, can you walk me through a little bit of your experiences being like a kid who, I guess what I'm trying to say, like, what do you remember from coaching perspective when you were young? Do you remember anything that stood out to you, like any experiences, like the tough coaches, any moments like
I had so many coaches. I skated for like 8,000 years, right? Like I feel like I was one of the first figure skaters probably. There's still whalebone skates at the time. I remember Thursday mornings I used to skate. I was young. Actually, young Patrick Chan was like 5 years old on the ice with me at the time, and I remember I skated on Thursday mornings. It was at McCormick Arena in Parkdale, my first skating club, West Toronto Skating Club, and I would go before school at 7. And some days I just didn't want to get off the ice. I would only go to school at lunch. I'd skate for like 4 hours straight just because I was having so much fun. But I had various coaches from various cultures. I had a Chinese coach growing up. I had Russian, Polish coaches, and they all kind of had their own approach that mixed their upbringing with Canadian. And I was always a very intense worker, and that was kind of my thing. I was talented enough, but I wasn't one of these proteges. I was a little more obsessed. I would just try and work twice or 3 times as hard as the peers that were ahead of me, and that's kind of really the only reason I got anywhere. But I had different coaches that kind of instilled different things in me. Some were about the quality aspect of skating, not just the jumps and the spins and the elements, but your entire performance on the ice, the way you step out on the ice, the way you get off the ice. And some of them were more about the details in your technique and making sure you're paying attention to all these things, because so much can happen all at once. And you have to, like in tennis, there's a lot going on, and there's technical reaction, there's timing, there's so many things. It's like kind of trying to hit a golf ball while leaning out a car, essentially, right? And skating's very similar in that aspect. But I had some coaches that were a little crazy too.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen the movie Whiplash? But
yes.
the drummer.
Oh my God, I love that movie.
Great movie.
One of my
great
favorite
movie.
movies.
Yeah, I had a coach very much like that. Like I skated at 1 a.m. Sometimes he would just call us in if he wasn't happy. Or
how young were you when he would?
That was more like the age of 16 to 20.
Okay.
21. He unfortunately passed away. But I remember being called in on a Sunday. I was at Wonderland with the other skaters. He'd call me and be like, "Oh, that's nice. I'll see you at the rink in 2 hours." And I'd have to leave Wonderland and go have a 2-hour private lesson by myself on a Sunday. Or, we'd be given a task. We weren't allowed to leave the rink until it was done. And sometimes it was a pretty ridiculous task. But it was kind of a methodology that it taught me some stuff, and some skaters, it kind of broke them. But if you made it through that and you survived it really toughened you up mentally. You were able to, going to a competition was a vacation. Yeah. He can't yell
thank
at
God
you.
we're competing.
He can't yell at you as much in public. Like, you're safe.
That's right.
Nothing's going to happen. There's only so much ice at competitions for practice. So it's not like you're going to be training like crazy. Yeah. But it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot, and in some ways it was very good for me because of my intense approach to training, and in some ways it was bad because of my intense approach to skating. I would get too obsessed. I burnt myself out a couple times. He sent me home for like 2 weeks because I couldn't even keep my eyes open in the change room. And just
so you would go the other way. You're like, oh yeah, you want to do this? Let's go.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you have any other stories like this with maybe other coaches like?
Not always on the ice. I had a very strong connection to most of my fitness trainers, and my Kung Fu, Sifu. Sifu means master in Chinese, but he was the same teacher for Elvis Stoico, and my dad actually sought him out when I was 19. I was having certain technical issues with focus. I kept what we call popping a jump, but you go for a jump and you bail, you don't pull in, and it becomes like a crutch, like a neurosis. Like you get spooked and all you can think about is not popping, and then you just bail, and you develop this habit, and it's really hard to break. And I was pretty stuck with it. So he figured, Elvis Stoico is some of the best focus in skating. Let's find who he worked with, and changed my career in a lot of ways. But I grew up doing karate and kung fu.
Sorry to interrupt, just to clarify, because I'm just like trying to wrap my mind around.
Sorry, there's a lot of technical jargon.
No, but what I'm trying to like understand clear and make sure that everybody understands the same. You went to a kung fu teacher?
Yeah.
To correct your skating technique?
To correct my mental approach.
Okay. So can you elaborate maybe how he helped you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always connected with martial arts. I did karate as a kid, and I started working with him with the sole focus of helping my skating. And then it kind of woke the martial art passion back up in me, and I really connected with it. And I would practice every day, and I would have a series of breathing techniques and visualizations through movement that I would do multiple times a day, and it became part of my ritual. And I would approach it the same way I would approach going to the gym, to strengthen my muscles, to support my body so that I was an effective machine on the ice.
Okay.
I trained my mind the same way. I saw it as a muscle, and habits are habits. So I tried to instill good habits and make my mind have strong connections to how to handle different situations. And I felt that improvement. I was aware of it. And so it just fueled that fire, and I kept buying more and more into it. And it just became my thing. Martial arts was the way I approached becoming strong-minded in sport.
It's interesting. It just, as long as you buy into a philosophy, like people can apply anything, and they can learn through any technique, any way, as long as like, okay, you know what, this works for me. Like, because you can see so many examples where people are like, oh, yoga works for me, martial arts, like they gravitate towards so many different things. But as long as it's working for them, like you were able to identify what's working for you and apply it. And I guess where I'm going with this is, a lot of people are lacking in self-awareness, and they're like, really, I don't really know where to go. So what do you recommend to those athletes who are, maybe are not as self-aware, just to try different
Park your
things?
ego.
Okay.
I would say, as athletes, ego is a strong thing. A lot of motivation stems from pride for athletes, and it's this this pride that drives us in a lot of ways. But the problem is that pride, that ego, is also our hindrance, because it creates this kind of frame of looking at things for us, that if things don't go this way, it means this about myself. But if you kind of shed your ego when you're learning from someone, and you empty your cup is empty, they can fill it, and you can taste what they're offering. If you go in there with the frame of mind of, well, I already know all these things, you've got like this much room left in your cup to learn. And I think the more you go into a situation hungry and thirsty to learn from them, even if maybe 99% of what they say if you're too busy thinking about what you already know, that 1% is going to fly by you. So the more you can go into any learning situation open and willing to grow from it, you're going to find connections yourself that maybe they didn't even know they were teaching you. And I've always approached anything like with that intention, because I feel like I know a lot about sports psychology at this point, or at least about how I approach sports psychology, and I try to teach it that way to my students on the ice too. But I feel like it can be very easy for your ego to get in the way and distract your brain of being able to intake information and can draw connections to your experiences. That's how we learn. We see something, we draw a connection from our own experiences, and it makes sense. And then we can take that information and use it. I think being experimental, trying different teaching techniques, trying different philosophies is really important, but don't be so quick to dismiss it and be skeptical right at the onset if you feel like it's not exactly what you think. A lot of people are very quick to say, like, it's not for me.
That's right.
Maybe it's not, but that doesn't mean there's not something you can learn.
That's a good point. And I feel it goes back to humility and to a basic principle of being a good person. And that's what, the more I talk to like different people from different sports, whether it's coaches, athletes, or like different professionals, doctors, psychologists, it always comes back to how good of a person you are. Are you humble? Like all these, are you respectful? Are you, all of these things, it comes down to that. Those things can give you an edge to become better and greater and possibly the best you can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the field of play and off the field of play, they directly affect each other.
Yeah.
So if you're great on the field of play, but you're shitty in your regular life, eventually you're practicing those types of behaviors. They're going to filter in under pressure, under duress. If you're in pain, if you're upset on the court, you're going to all of a sudden start behaving that way. And that's going to distract you, and it's going to take away from your ability to handle difficult situations. Yeah. Same with vice versa. You know what I mean? I truly believe that if you practice being a champion in your life, whatever that means to you, on and off the field of play, in and out of training or practice or competition, all you're doing is developing habits. It's the same as, you know, if you're a runner, you don't practice or you don't walk around with terrible walking technique, because now you're building a chain reaction in your body that counteracts the training you're doing. The mind's the same thing. It's a muscle. It's a habitual thing. So if you handle difficulties in your life, if you handle relationships in your life, if you handle anything that like sets you off in a way that, you know, is counterintuitive to what you've been trying to do in your sport, you're just going to make it harder for yourself.
Yeah.
So if you can find every opportunity in life to help you grow and to learn and to build those skills, I mean, you're just getting more reps.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the more I talk to you, the more I realize we definitely talk the same language in terms of, you know, the mind, because that's clearly the common denominator here. But there's a lot of differences, you know, in figure skating and tennis, just for my brain to understand. Like, for example, like how many, like going back to the time when you won the silver medal in Olympics, like the whole concept of Olympics to me is just mind blowing, because it's once in 4 years.
Well, it's very counterintuitive to tennis in general. Like we compete 6-7 times, big competitions a year. You guys do that in like, you know, the clay court season.
Yeah, exactly. Like every week is a different competition. Like you lost here first round, okay, whatever.
Well, yeah. See, even if you make it far into a tournament and you start in qualifiers, you play how many matches in one tournament, right? Yeah. We compete twice in a week, and then it's like a exhausting week for us. We have to like reset, and
that's right.
It's so different. Our sport's so much about these targeted peaks and valleys, and like it's planned ahead. We know 3-4 months in advance where we're going to be competing.
Yeah.
What we're going to be expecting for the most part, and how to prepare for it. Where you guys is just like,
yeah, and that's where like a lot of coaches are debating on the planning part, you know, in terms of course we plan, of course we have our annual plans, and we have our like the weekly, the micro mesocycle and everything.
Goals for your plans.
Exactly. But at the same time, like every week the plan can change, because, you know, you're winning, boom, maybe we play upper tournaments, we're losing, maybe we have to slow down, maybe we take 2 weeks, or maybe, you know. So with you guys, and that's where I wanted to talk to you a little bit more, how, like, because the amount of pressure you have for those 2 tournaments is incredible. Like I cannot even imagine the level of that pressure. And you get to go on the ice like 2 times like 3 times. Like how does that work? So
yeah, we get to practice. You know, depending on the competition. Normally we'll arrive. Let's say we do a Grand Prix in Asia. We'd arrive on like a Tuesday. We get to practice, or even a Wednesday. Sometimes you get to practice one day and then you compete the next day. So you're like adjusting, and it's over in 2.5 minutes, and then 4 minutes, right? It's very quick. If you aren't present, you blink and it's over, and you have no idea what happens. Yeah. We don't have time for a reset button, right? We're like in rally reset button kind of mentality.
There's no like go to your towel and, you know,
no.
fake a medical timeout. There's no,
you get disqualified for sure. But you know, that part is what makes our sport difficult in that way. And I think the hardest part about figure skating is that you're judged on how you do it, and your overall performance, the way you present yourself, even before you start your program. When you skate out and you present yourself, it creates this image of who you are on the ice. And right away you have to grab people's attention. It's a show and a competition. So you need to establish yourself as either an individual or a team that grabs your attention, that owns the ice, a presence, almost like royalty out there that you can't look away. So on the practices, there's, the judges are watching the practices.
Oh, really?
Well, there's so much happening so quickly, they have to have an idea of what to expect, right?
That's interesting. So even the practices in some way become a little
important.
bit of, wow.
Yeah, it's a weird sport. It's
Yeah.
really weird.
It's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a very bizarre sport. It's very unique, and it's not only about if you got the job done. It's about how well you got the job done. You could win a point and let's say the umpire was like, yeah, that was in, but I mean their forehand was prettier, so
that's right.
Let's split the point.
10.0.
Yeah. Right. So and you sit there, you get your score, you have to like go back and kind of analyze what happened. Sometimes you're not sure, sometimes it makes no sense.
So can we talk about that part, because that can be so like frustrating and demotivating at some maybe in some cases.
It's the worst.
Is there a clear like, okay, this is what you have to do to get like a good mark, or it can be very vague?
I mean, it's written that it's clear.
Okay.
But it's judged by people.
Yeah.
It's subjective. There's no way, and unless they can develop AI that's so intelligent that they can, the algorithms are able to read what is happening and create a definite number value for absolutely everything. If it can identify art somehow that way, there's no way we're going to move past this completely.
Of course.
It's hard. It's kind of like, I was fourth at Worlds 2 years in a row by like a point and a half, that's like a personal preference.
Wow.
That's, but judges are people, like in the moment they might have felt that or thought that, or even like, I don't know, I'm going to go with the safe bet because they're ranked higher. It can happen.
Really?
It can happen.
Wow.
Yeah, it's happened. And
at the highest
and then
level
as
also.
a skater, you're sitting there going like, I just worked for like 5 months for that specific competition. And if it's the case of the Olympics, I worked for my entire life for this moment, right? And then if you miss a medal or you miss a placement by like this much because someone decided on something, you don't get tours, it can change your whole career.
Yeah,
it's very difficult. And with amateur sport as well, without the same money that's in tennis, it changes the whole sphere of what you're doing it for. Not that tennis players don't do it for their own passion and love, but the monetary value,
it's
that's presented to you.
Yeah.
You can't ignore that.
No, you can't.
You have to have a very clear picture of why you're doing it. Your why has to be so strong, because you have to come back home. You have to motivate yourself after that, like gutting, that you get if it doesn't go the way you think you deserved. And you have to find motivation. You have to find passion, and you can't just get through it. It can't be robotic. You have to invest yourself in your performance, or else the audience isn't going to buy it.
That's true.
It's just blah.
Yeah, like you said, like when you're gonna show up for that performance, like they're gonna see it in your eyes. They're gonna feel it, because you can sense that so good. I remember watching the Rogers Cup maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. Not the point. There were like two players, maybe ranked, I'm not gonna name names obviously, like 35 to 50 playing, and they finished their match, and next on court were Nadal and Wawrinka. And when those guys came on the court, you could sense the vibe completely changed. You felt like, oh shoot, like these guys are for real. Like even if you didn't know who they were, like there was this sense of greatness right away. Like these two guys like winning Grand Slams, and they walked in like they owned the freaking court. That was unbelievable feeling. I'll never forget it. And similar to what you were saying, like it's that practice of being a champion, walking like a champion, and presenting yourself like a champion. And obviously they're doing it because they are champions, but it comes from
but I mean, it's all how you look at it. You can frame anything in a positive or a negative. You can decide everything that's presented to you. You decide which fork in the road you're going to take. So if you're a champion, you can look at it as, oh my God, everyone's trying to beat me. I have so much more pressure on me. Everyone's expecting this of me. Or you can walk out there and like, I'm the champion. Everyone else has to measure up to me, and I create this era of intimidation. You can decide which is going to fuel you and which is going to make you, which you're going to decide to use as your mentality towards the match, or even throughout the match, right? Like, because there's tennis is a marathon. It's a roller coaster, and you have to be able to ride that with being able to hit your reset button and stay within the lanes of a neutral mentality, right? Which is super interesting for me to watch, because a tennis match is a lot like a training session for us. Being able to bring it back. If you're having a killer match, you don't want to get too hyped up.
That's right.
Right? You just want to be like, the next point is the next point. Same with us. The next jump is the next jump. If you're having even in a competition, your best performance ever, if you get too excited, you're going to trip on your crossovers.
Yeah.
It happens often. For me, the interesting thing is in skating, it's political and it's also subjective. So when someone is a champion, they automatically, you can't help as a human but see them as a champion and see them as better. Even if they don't skate as well, there's something about them that you want to hold up.
Yeah.
When you look at sports like tennis, where there isn't that subjective side to say like, well, they looked like a champion, I'll give them some. Yeah. But then the phenomena of, Federer and Nadal and these guys, Djokovic, that are like staying up there, what makes them different than these other players who are absolutely incredible, and they beat them sometimes, right? But what makes them different? What makes these guys able to, withstand aging, withstand injuries, withstand dips in their career and come back and, like power through, like Djokovic's resurgence. It's amazing to see an athlete be able to refine whatever it was that got them there in the first place. And a lot of it's physical, but in my opinion, it's more mental.
Yeah, it's maybe their why is deeper,
The why is deeper, but I think it comes down to belief. Yeah. They have a stronger faith in themselves that withstands losses and difficulties and bad points and mental blocks, and sometimes something's not working, and they're able to still believe in themselves enough that they still function as a champion, not as someone who starts crumbling, right? And that's the biggest difference is that I see, is that when they walk out on the court, no matter what's happened before, they walk out there with the intention that they are going to be superior, that they are going to be, even if it's against themselves, they're out there with a mission, and they're very clear about it.
Yeah, that's for sure. Because those guys are just keep producing the same results over and over and over again. And with the sport where you get to play so many matches a year and compete on such a high level where like anything can change, and there's so many young guys coming up who you would think, okay, maybe there's going to be a change in generation now, and it's not happening. Right now we can see a little bit more
bits of it,
but still like it's
based on statistics, based on logic, it should have happened already.
Yeah, that's right, but it hasn't.
Right, but it's so interesting. Like, I think tennis fans are very lucky in that regard, because they're right now they're witnessing one of the most incredible times in tennis, for men's tennis, right? But I find it super fascinating to try and understand what it is that sets them apart. When I apply it to what I know about skating, it's about a performance level. It's about owning your space and owning your time, you know what I mean? Your moment out there. And for us, it's a shorter moment. For you guys, it's a series of moments. Yeah. And I think they own each moment better, whereas some people see it as one big moment. And it's very easy to get lost in there. It can disappear on you. But if you're able to reset and you have that mental endurance to keep it as close to the same as possible and not let your emotions take over, I think you have a much better chance of executing your plan.
Yeah, I like that point that you brought up. It's very interesting. I haven't heard anybody saying it like this, but you're essentially breaking it down to a very specific. It's like you're editing a video and you have like so many different bits and pieces, and you have to, like you're saying, own every single one scenario, that's happening within a match. That's really cool. I like
right.
that.
Well, but also having the ability to like hit stop, record, cut, next one, right? Exactly. Because it's easy for them to bleed. We're humans. We're emotional, and that's. I think some people are very definite about like no emotions. Some people are definite about like, get feisty, get angry. I don't think there's one answer. No, I think the more you have the flexibility to take whatever you're feeling, thinking, doing, and channel it into fuel and direct that fuel like a laser as opposed to like a light bulb that spreads light in every direction, it's a waste of energy. Right? Like it's minimal energy spreading in many directions versus all the energy focus in one direction, and it's much more powerful. If you're able to channel whatever's going on inside of you and outside of you and turn it into something, you've got an upper hand. You know what I mean? You've got something you can use no matter even on a bad day, you can salvage something.
That's right.
And I think that never give in, never give up thing about being an athlete is super important, because if you're able to use that and frame it in a way that you can have your mind grab onto things and bring that mentality of never giving in to even to yourself, and using whatever you can find to focus on that. You know, if your intention is to walk out on the court and stay level-headed, that's your goal. You know what I mean? And not start getting distracted on everything else. But it's easier said than done. Obviously.
And I mean, tennis this is where like it's so different from figure skating. We already touched on it a little bit, where
it's nice. You guys have sun.
Well, that and unless you're playing in Canada, sometimes it feels like we're on the ice.
Man, when you're in a rink all day, every day, trust me, you take the tennis.
I'll believe you. I'll take your word for it. But what I was gonna say is that I completely spaced out right now.
Sorry.
What did we? No, it's all good. Yeah, where it's different, where 80% of the time we're not playing, so it's so easy to get distracted with your thoughts and emotions about that last point. Oh shit, I should have gone cross court or no down the line either. And it's like, you know, and then you have to serve already because it's like it's been 20 seconds, and then you're still thinking about. So where in your case it's 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes of non-stop performance, you have to be so focused, and that's where I wanted to ask you. How do you maintain that focus for that long, in terms of, is there any certain techniques that you use, anything that helps you to maintain? Because essentially I'm trying to apply it to tennis right away. It's kind of like being focused in a rally. Like I see a rally like a very small version of a, you know, of
performance. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, because you know tennis, that's why I'm trying to draw these parallels. You understand tennis?
And I talked to Sharon a lot about her matches. We talk before every match and after every match, and I've learned a lot about the sport from her. My brother was a competitive player as well, and so I definitely understand the ins and outs of the sport. I would never call myself an expert. But
you, I mean, honestly, like for a person who never played the sport, I mean, on a competitive level, I would say you understand it way better than some coaches. Because I've heard don't
name any coaches.
No, I'm not gonna name any coaches, but I'm gonna say that when we were in Austria, when you came to join the tour with the Sharon. And I overheard you talking to some of the kids, and I was like, oh shoot, that's pretty good. I don't know, you know, that was really like insightful, and I think the kids benefit a lot from it.
You know, I'm a very analytical person, and it used to get in my way as a kid, as an athlete. I would just overthink everything, and I couldn't find a way to make it good. It would just hurt me, and then. You know, I figured out how to frame that mindset and use it to my advantage as a tool. You know, some people say a dumb athlete's a better athlete. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think an athlete who is able to be in charge of their thoughts and their focus is a good athlete. So if you have the intelligence to understand what you're doing, be a student of sport, be a student of biomechanics, be a student of the physics of your sport and understand it, but then practice learning to put it away. I was always a student of, you know, why things happened on the ice, the physics, the actual science as to what was happening, and also the fitness. I really needed to know. I'd get a fitness test and I'd be like bugging the physiologist. I want to know my heart rate values. I want to know all these things. So when I go work out and I do my cardio, I'm not just running. I want to know, am I beating this from before? If I'm tired that day, like what is the best case scenario? Am I able to achieve that? And I would use that as a way to busy my brain that was already busy and use it for good. So when I watch biomechanics, when I watch other sports, I try and relate it to what I know and see the correlation. I'm also a martial arts instructor. I don't teach that much anymore, but I used to teach Krav Maga quite a bit, Israeli self-defense.
Yes.
And the mechanics of a punch are very similar to the mechanics of a ground stroke. Driving through the ball is, it starts with the ground and your connection to the ground, and it works its way up. It's a very similar chain reaction. So when I watch it, I just try and understand it.
Yeah.
But then I try and understand what are the things that happen through that chain reaction, which is like a millisecond, but it can feel like an hour.
Yeah.
What are the things that are happening in your mind that can ruin that? And for you guys, you rehearse, but it's more reactionary than ours. So for us, you can have thoughts, and I think when your mind goes crazy while you're stressed or nervous, I like to think of it as like having a TV on in the background. Like you can pay attention to it, or it can be white noise, right?
Okay.
You don't have to listen to it. The more you try and ignore it, the more your mind listens to it. So if you just kind of accept that it's there in one ear, out the other, and you focus on your task, you're going to be okay. You're going to waste less energy. For us, that we're able to do that in and out throughout a routine, so because we have music to connect to, we have specific timing notes we have to hit, right? There's very choreographed, and it's rehearsed all year. Yeah. It takes us probably 8 months before a routine's like at its top level.
Really, from the beginning,
it's so complicated.
to the end.
It's very complicated.
Okay.
For you guys, I find what happens, and it's more like fighting, reactionary, is that your mind's thought process of trying to like protect yourself from what might happen, your ego, like, oh, what if this happens, or your fear of failure, or your need to like control situations, your mind's processing potential outcomes, and it's distracting your brain, which is your eyes recognizing what's happening, your brain processing it and sending a message to your body, which you have practiced hundreds and hundreds of times, that it knows how to do that if you're not distracted. But if you distract it with all these projected outcomes because you're nervous about wanting something that has nothing to do with hitting the ball, but it has to do with a human ego with placement or this or that or whatever, you're not actually performing as instinctual as you can. So you're getting in your own way. And I think every sport, 90% of it is getting in your own way. I mean, if you play your absolute best and someone beats you because they're just better, that's great. Yeah. Learn from it, go back, get better at those things. But most of the time, if you don't perform as well as you think you could have, it's because you got in your own way. And I think that is empowering, because it means that when you walk out on the court, you know that you have the power to change that.
You're in full control. And that's why there's so much emphasis on like control your controllables and focus on the things that you can control. Exactly.
But that's life.
Yeah.
There are so many things you can control, and there's so many things that literally you have no control over.
Exactly, like the rain today.
Yeah. But honestly, like if you spend the entire day mad about the rain, pissed off, swearing all day, that's right. You're just going to be mad and nothing's going to change. But sports is the exact same. If you're trying to like control the things you can't control, you're just wasting energy and distracting yourself from doing your job. Yeah. So for me, martial arts gave me a way to learn that and practice it. So I would meditate through movement, and I would draw connections between my mind, my body, and everything in between using breath. And so I'm a visual person, and I would visualize things, and I would get myself into this space where I was visualizing, syncing my brain and my body up, and then practicing my routines once I got into that deep state.
Okay. I really want to talk to you about what exactly you're thinking, and or any figure skate. I mean, exactly you, specifically you, because I don't know what other people.
I don't
know
what a lot of other people.
Yeah, so perfect. Yeah. Let's forget about other. Specifically you. During your routine, there was a funny Nike commercial, I don't know, like 10, 15 years ago, where it's like they were talking about, okay, let's get into, we're going to show you what's going on in the mind of a runner with like hurdles. And it's like, once the gun goes on, it's like run, jump, run, jump. Yeah. So it's kind of funny, but what is figure skating thinking while performing that routine? What were you thinking? Is it like purely like, okay, like turn here, like, you know, you're going on the, I don't know, I'm just making stuff up, but like jump, turn, like rotate, bring the hands in, or like
ideally,
yeah,
in like a perfect scenario, if you're doing everything you should be doing, it should be a bit of an out of body experience. I mean, you know, in sports psychology, they call it peak flow, in the zone, whatever you want to call it. You should almost finish and go like, whoa, what happened? Ideally, because you're so lost in the performance and you're so rehearsed that your technical elements become part of the choreography. And that's the most ideal scenario you can find in skating. You really only get a few of those in a career because they're so...
in a career,
I would say, like to that extent, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I would say for how much rehearsal figure skaters go through and how well they can perform in practice versus how few skaters compete cleanly, it's got to be one of the lowest percentages in sport.
Okay, that's insane to think about.
Well, but if you think about it, you're on a little blade and you're jumping around and twirling around. There's so many things that can go wrong. Yeah, ice is slippery, you know, like you could step on a chunk of ice from someone else's jump takeoff and that could be the end of the jump. But that could be
they clean it after
every 2 warm-up groups? So that's for pairs, that's 8 skaters, 2 6-minute warm-ups, right? For singles, that's 12 skaters. Wow. A lot can happen in there. 8 jumps a program in a free program for men. I guess it's 7 now, they just changed the rules. So it's a lot of opportunities for holes in the ice, right? If you skate last, if the ice quality is crap and it's really hot in the building, the ice starts to melt a bit and it becomes rough and it gets slower, and now you're pushing harder to get through your routine, and you know, your timing on your edge is different. Yeah. Kind of like you know, some courts, the ball bounces different. It's faster, it's slower, it's more slippery on certain clay.
That's right.
Very similar for us. You know, even if you step on your partner's blade and you nick the blade and you don't have much of an edge there and you don't have time to sharpen it, like, what are you going to do?
No, that's right.
It's like playing with a broken string. So, you know, I think the things that you think about, sorry, I went on a tangent there.
No, I mean, the more you talk, the more you're bringing so many good points here and so much experience is like unbelievable value.
Thanks, man.
No, really incredible value to everybody who's
listening. It's just my craziness coming out of my mouth, you know?
And that's why you're here, man, to do exactly that.
Talk about my crazy. Awesome. This is like free therapy. Thank you, Bogdan.
Anytime, man.
Yeah, so the things I think about, I mean, my brain runs through weird, you know, words that just chatter, like you're gonna miss this, you're going into a jump, you're stepping on the takeoff edge and you're like, oh no, or this or that. Like, weird things happen. Sometimes you skate by, you're presenting, you're doing your choreography, you look at your partner and you see someone you know right in the front audience, like staring in your eyes in a rink of like 18,000 people. You're
wow.
Like, it's awkward. It's kind of awkward, like presenting to the judges too. There's a panel of judges sitting there, like they can't really react and you're supposed to like entertain them, right? So you're eye to eye with them. I would say the things that go through your mind, you want to have your small key points for each technical thing, and that'll vary based on how your jumps are doing. It's always a moving animal that kind of need what you need on that day, and part of that's up to you knowing yourself, and part of that's up to your coach knowing. Like we do everything with a coach. It's key, a few key points, and you want to keep it simple. You know, the KISS method, keep it simple, stupid, is really important with highly technical sports. And the more you can keep those moments small, you free up your ability to connect with the music and your partner if you're a pair or dance team. And for me, it was always, you know, just try and find my stillness in my mind and try and find that kind of I try to think like a warrior mentality, like, you know, the surface of the water is very still, but underneath you're ready for anything.
That's right.
And whatever happens, you got it. And that was my optimal performance mentality, that like I felt invincible, but I was also like chill. Yeah. As a pair skater, you don't always know what your partner's going to do. And depending on your dynamic and depending on that skater, your partner's dynamic, sometimes you have to be stable for both of you. So I would have to be twice as stable, twice as chill, twice as ready, twice as willing to adapt. And pair skating and an ice dance, two people moving on the ice, it's like synchronized stunt car driving. You know, like your awareness and your trajectory and your patterns and understanding where, when you step forward, you have all these intricate steps, but you also have to know your dimensions of the rink, and you have to know if you push a certain amount and where you face, if you're going to run out of room or not, and if you're going to be able to generate enough speed without like having to hit the brakes and then try and generate again.
That's incredible, honestly.
Well, these are things that hopefully you address in practice, but sometimes things happen, and you have to be able to. You have to be able to adjust, but you also have to be able to not let your emotions get revved up when something happens. And so it's like in a rally, you know, like if you hit a bad ground stroke and you frame it, and it lands in, you have to be ready. That's right. That's the same for us.
Okay, how fast are skaters go? Like you mentioned in para skating, obviously, and I just, the first thing that got into my head, like, how fast do you guys go? Like, because it's so hard to, you know, be so in sync. So I'm just curious, do you know, like, is there any statistic on like?
There are. I don't know the actual speed. I mean, I would imagine you can get up to like over 30 kilometers an hour.
That's
I'm sure.
Insane. To think about the balance you have to have, the like you're saying, to know and feel your partner.
Yeah, and sometimes even in a lift. Like sometimes as a male pair skater, sometimes in a lift, if a pattern is off, and I'm having to adjust while I'm turning with someone over my head on one hand, it's like you have to have this certain level of neutrality that helps you think ahead but stay in the moment. Yeah, and that's, I think, the tricky part, so that you still have some awareness left to you know, commit to the performance side of things.
That's insane, man. Wow. Who picks the music and the dance? Is it a teamwork? Is it like, how does
every team's different? You know, some people are very artistically inclined and they're very aware, and you know, they're some skaters are very involved, and some are just like, I pay you for a reason. Make those decisions. It really depends. I mean, for us, it was always a team effort. It was, the choreographer kind of had a vision. Sometimes they would ask us, like, is there something you really feel connected to, you want to skate to, and start listening to stuff, and I'll give you some ideas and we'll start thinking about it. And sometimes you'll have in mind, like, okay, you know what, we're going to do a tango short program. That's what we're going to look for. We're going to look through tangos. Then all of a sudden a piece of music will pop up, completely different genre, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, that's the one. Yeah, wow. And then you start choreographing it, and then there's the costume process, and the costume designer communicates with the choreographer and the coaches and listens to the music, and you send them some of the basic choreography that you've done so they understand what your vision is. And wow. It's a whole process. Sometimes you don't get your costumes in time for your first event because
really?
Yeah.
So what happens in that case?
You wear something that you had already that's kind of, you know, neutral, that'll work. Black often works.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
So most of the time, if you see somebody wearing black, it's probably they didn't get the
not always. But black's the safest thing you can wear on the ice, right? Because you stand out. You stand out against the white backdrop. Your silhouettes your lines are long and lean, and you match easier. You will most often see pair teams on practice wearing black so that they look like they're matching. Wow. Yeah. Little tricks. Wow. It's ridiculous.
Dylan, you know what? We talked about it a little bit earlier, like a minute ago, about how the doubles game is a little bit different in figure skating, and because you know, in tennis, and there's two people, but it's completely different dynamics. What you were saying,
and this is fascinating for me, and I talk about this with my skating friends, and we find it so wild. You know, Sharon, I mean, I don't know if the viewers know, Sharon Fitchman is my fiance, but
that's right.
She just came out of retirement recently. She's just focusing on doubles, and so and I'm like quite involved in her career, and we discuss a lot about her tennis, and partially just because I want to be supportive, but also because I find it fascinating. I want to help if I can. But the dynamic of partnerships in doubles tennis is so crazy compared to what we do. I mean, for us, we train 5-6 days a week with the same partner, and we still call like a partnership that's 2 years in where you don't skate with anyone else, new.
Really?
You're still new. You're still gelling. You're still learning how to skate with each other.
That's insane.
Even if you've skated together for 5 years, when you get a new routine, you're bumping into each other. Your first competition is exhausting because you haven't figured out how to get through the program as a unit, and it's so complicated.
Do you compete? Can you compete in singles and doubles? I'm talking tennis.
You can definitely. Mostly in junior. It's very rare to see in senior.
So it's when people, it's basically like you're either a singles player or a doubles player. I mean, again, talking very primitive here.
Even physically, the demands on the body are different. Especially for a paired guy, you have to be much bigger than a single skater. I mean,
makes sense.
Single skaters are the guys are generally shorter. Much lighter, narrower.
They're short, because I remember Plushenko, for example, when he was, I remember that's probably, not gonna lie, one of the few figure skating performances that I've seen. Like,
he's a legend. Like he's one of the greats, and so it's not crazy for you.
My parents would watch the Olympics, and I was like a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, and they're like, "Oh, look at this guy! He's like one of the best figure skating at that time." He was. And I was like, oh yeah, that's good, and that's how I remember his name.
He's one of the names that'll last through time for sure.
Was he the first one to do like 4?
No. That was Kurt Browning, Canadian.
Okay.
And the first one to do a quadruple combo was Elvis Stoico, Canadian.
Okay.
Just the demands on the body, and you see even now the guys are getting smaller. The ones at the top are smaller because they're doing. Some of them are doing 5 quads in a program, and doing a quad before was like the top of the mountain in your program. You opened with it, or it was your second element, and the whole program was like framed around it. Guys are whipping them off like they're nothing now. There's even some like 13, 14-year-old, 15-year-old girls from Russia doing multiple quads. So the sport's changing.
That's crazy. What's causing the change? Because people
technique.
Okay.
The technique's improved. The understanding of how to get the jump done efficiently, wasting less time in the air before you start rotating.
Is it because of technology that allows to see
a combination?
That difference?
A combination of technology, a combination of just understanding, and also a huge factor is just the fact that they're getting done. It's a ripple effect. You see people doing quads, you go, oh, I can do that too. If it's being done, not 2 people in the world, but like, you can't be in the top 10 without a quad. So if you understand that, your brain now stops seeing it as impossible.
Yeah.
Right? It's like the 5-minute mile.
Yeah, especially for the kids who are on their phones, they're on YouTube, they're watching highlights, and then you see this guy, this girl, this pair doing this thing. So it's just
it seeps into your brain for sure.
Like, let's try this. And that kids are obviously gravitate towards the best, and they want to try this. Like, how come we cannot?
And even coaches are teaching them not, let's try and get you a double. Oh, let's try and get you a triple. Oh my God, maybe a quad. No, now they're teaching the singles, the doubles, the triples with the intention that it's packaged for a quad. So you're building the house with proper framework, as opposed to like building the house and then trying to decorate it and hoping it stays up.
That's right. So it's the fundamentals, again, trying to speak general coaching.
It is the fundamentals. So the building blocks are specifically geared towards understanding what needs to be done, and it's reverse engineered.
So technique is becoming even more important with all the complexity that you can build on later on. So,
I mean, if you go back in time, Brian Orser, legendary Canadian skater, at his time, when he did triple axel, there was probably a handful of guys in the world doing triple axels, and they were 4 feet in the air, and the reason only a few of them could do it was because they were freaks. They could jump much higher than everybody else. The technique was so inefficient. They'd spend the first third of the jump just climbing, and then they'd start rotating. Okay. So if you didn't have that natural hang time that some people have, it looks like they're sitting on a shelf in the air and they come down.
Wow.
You can't do a triple axel. But now you see people doing triple axels that are like maybe a quarter of the size, because the understanding of how to get the jump started, it's just the engineering of how the body attacks that type of skill, and how you get through it. You're wasting less energy. It's much more impressive, and you'll get more quality marks if it's a big, huge, impressive jump. But the technical cleanliness of everything is much smoother.
Yeah.
all that to say,
Yeah.
single skaters versus pair skaters. I mean, when I decided to focus just on pairs, after that I gradually put on about 35 pounds of muscle, just because that was what the demand was for my body. And I'm not short as a pair skater, but I'm definitely not tall. So I had to be strong. I have some biomechanical issues. My elbows don't lock. So I had to work harder for certain things in lifts. So I had to be strong enough to be able to withstand that. It's very rare to see someone who's the size of a pair skater be able to do what single skaters do at that level. Like pair skaters, we have to jump. We have to do triple jumps. They're actually becoming more difficult in pairs, but not even close to being comparable to single skaters. And doubles tennis, it's, you're not actually like balancing on someone's hand over top of them on the ice. So
that's right.
You can work on your own tennis game, and as long as you understand the strategy, you can practice without them. You can not see them. And this is your regular doubles partner, let alone, people are like emailing each other weeks before a tournament, days before a tournament.
Sometimes the day before, hey, like, you want to play doubles tomorrow?
It's
sure.
Wild. It's like, it is physically impossible for us. Like, we would step out on the ice and not know what to do.
Yeah.
It's an arranged marriage.
Well, just like you said, like the routine for single skater, it takes 8 months, and for double skater as well, 8 months.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the person, but and how difficult the choreography is.
Yeah, and 2 years it's called new. We're just getting started.
It's still new. It's still new. Yeah, wow. And because you have to almost be able to think the way they're thinking. You have to be able to predict what they're going to do. You almost start breathing in sync. You start like finishing each other's sentences. And it's very interesting to watch doubles, because sometimes I see teams that separate, they're not the two best singles players, but if they gel together on the court and they're able to, they play together so much that they know when something happens, they do this formation, they do that formation. There's no bumping into each other. There's like very, very organized.
Yeah.
They're able to beat better singles players. And it all comes back to a functioning unit is much stronger than individual pieces.
Yeah.
And I find it interesting that a lot of doubles teams don't take that as seriously as they could. Maybe they do relative to tennis.
Yeah.
But coming out of a sport where it's everything,
you're like, hey guys, you can improve this. It's not enough, because again, like
work
you said,
out together.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like, do some extra stuff together. Learn to become in sync so that you have that gel, you have that camaraderie that, like, I know that person is there with me, not I hope that person is there with me. And if they're having a bad day, understand what they need from you to pick them back up, and vice versa.
Yeah.
That teamwork, I think there's so much more that can be done with doubles teams, but a lot of players that play doubles are focusing on singles. So it's also a little different, right?
I mean, I'm sure if you talk to the Bryan brothers, or those
the specialists,
that's right, the Soares Murray, and the ones who specialize on doubles, I don't know for sure, but I'm almost 100% certain that they're very close to what you're saying.
Yes.
Maybe not to that degree. Maybe that's where it's going. Maybe that's what it's gonna take to become the next doubles pair. Maybe in tennis, just that level of commitment to each other. But it's definitely huge insight what you're bringing, and that's why I love talking to people with different backgrounds. And because what you said there, I'm sure somebody who's listening, a lot of coaches are like, "Oh shoot, that's an area, a gap where we can cover."
And every sport has them, right?
Amazing,
we as people, as humans, we get stuck in our ways and we get scared of the unknown. So we stick to the comfortable, and it happens in every sport. We have, skating took forever in Canada to start incorporating sports science. This is what figure skaters need, but they can't lift weights because they'll get too bulky and this, that, and that. It's like, no, there are people doing those types of things in the right way.
Yeah.
Learn from it. And it's really progressed because of it. Every sport has their own crutch, their own like mentality that gets in their own way. And I think the smartest thing you can do is learn from people that are doing different things.
Yeah.
And be curious as to how you can incorporate that into what you need. Like, pick and choose, you know what I mean? Put together an ensemble that works, not
Exactly. It comes back to what we talked about earlier. Like, don't be stuck in a, don't have like that closed-minded mentality.
Yes.
Pick from different things that have been proved successful, and maybe that haven't been proved successful. Maybe you're just trying things around and then figuring out what's gonna work for you, if that makes sense. Like, like you doing martial arts, and some people doing yoga I know a lot of people doing yoga for tennis, just to again bring their mind to calmness,
present.
like to present, for whatever reason. I don't know, like so I think it's very, very important.
And it's finding what works for you, right?
Exactly.
And understanding it, and then buying into it, and then having a clear picture of what works for you and what you need to do, and bringing it every single day. Your intention has to be clear, your attention has to be clear, and your why has to be clear. And when you have those three and you focus on them and you treat them with respect, you're always going to move forward. But if you lose sight of that and you focus on the things that aren't as important, you get distracted. Yeah. And then you start moving backwards, and there's always going to be things and people that are going to try and break you down, right? But it's really up to you how you want your career to be and the kind of experience you want to have with your career. Because at the end of the day, there's always going to be someone better than you. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be someone who's going to beat your records, who's going to be faster, stronger, hit the ball harder, who's going to want it more. But when you look back, you want to know, I lived it, I tried my best, I didn't leave any stone unturned, and it made me a better person. And I can, my soul is full from it, and I can put it to rest and be proud of what I did, as opposed to a lot of people looking back, I should have done this, I should have done that. That's the worst place to be.
Yeah, I know. And speaking about that kind of mentality, I'm sure when you watch tennis and whether it's junior, it's a completely another level, but even on the pro level, you see a lot of frustration coming from players.
Yes. We were talking about this. Yes,
exactly.
I find it.
What's your thoughts on that?
Sports have culture, right? Each sport has their own culture, and there's a level of acceptable things and not acceptable things. In figure skating, it's a little stuffy, but it's a performance. And so the second you step out on the ice, your performance starts, even unofficially. And the way you project yourself, it sits with people, and even in practice. And you see skaters, some of them that like throw tantrums and get mad and like put on a bad performance during practice. If they're upset, you kind of go like, oh, they look like a spoiled baby. It's not going their way and they're throwing a tantrum. In tennis, you see a lot more demonstration of frustration. And I understand, because tennis is a long match. It's kind of like a practice for us, and a lot of frustrating stuff happens. I mean, even just me playing tennis recreationally, I'm like, this is freaking hard. This is, very aggravating. But I do believe that it is not a necessary thing. And while that's easier said than done, when I watch, I do see players admit to themselves without knowing it their defeat. When they start smashing their rackets, when they start, like letting their emotions take over, they've lost control of their car. And now they're trying to steer a car that's swerving all over the place against a car that's driving straight. And how do you beat that, right? And you're literally giving them confidence because they have gotten to you and you have shown them that. Yeah. Not only that, you now in your subconscious don't believe in yourself as much, because there's negative emotions just pumping through you, and you are allowing yourself to be them. Yeah. Whereas if you are doing a good job of hitting your reset button and treating each point like it's its own entity,
that's right.
You probably won't get that far frustrated that you completely explode. That being said, when your heart rate's up, your emotions spike instantly, right? So it is a very difficult thing, but I guess it's as important to be able to bring them back down just as quickly, and having the discipline to breathe and having the discipline to focus on what your game plan is. If that happens, some people are feisty, and that is an asset for them because they don't give up and they don't give in. But that feistiness can also turn on themselves, right? It's like having a guard dog that if you spook it, it'll attack you. But it's the same thing. Yeah. So being in charge of that, I think, is something coming out of skating where, that performance level dictates the way you carry yourself. And if you carry yourself like a champion, you'll behave like a champion. And behaving like a champion has like stoicism to it. Like you feel above it, you know, and there's always that level of pride. You take pride in the fact that you are behaving like a champion. And I think high-level athletes in any sport are mentors, whether they want to be or not. If you decide to be an athlete and you want to be successful, it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Young athletes watch what the top athletes do.
Yeah.
And you're breeding the next generation of culture in your sport. And I think every sport should strive to have, not that you're stuffy and you can't express your emotions, but that you understand what you're doing when you do it. Mm-hmm. And I mean, when you see a martial artist, it's all about Zen. It's all about,
that's right.
You are at one with yourself. You're at peace with yourself. You walk out there into a battle knowing that you could die. And you can't walk out there thinking about being scared of dying or having like pride that, you know, someone's a better fighter than you. You walk out there, you lay it out on the line, and you are at peace with the fact that you're doing it. I think sports is the same. We're all warriors.
It's a mini battle. It's a mini battle.
Exactly. You're all warriors in your own sense. And I think the way you carry yourself and the energy you bring to it will directly affect your own experience of it. And it will build in a positive or negative way over time. You either cloud your own career in negativity, or you cloud it in integrity. Yeah. And I think those things do affect your overall performance.
How do you, because this is a very mature thought of a retired Olympic athlete, you know what you're saying.
These are all ideals, right? Like I wasn't perfect.
No. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah.
How early does it start? Because obviously it's part of the culture, of the figure skating culture. How early do you remember your coaches telling you that about these things?
Early.
Like
early.
How early?
But I didn't always listen. And it was that one whiplash crazy coach. Mm-hmm. My first day there, I think I don't know, I fell in a jump and I made like a face, and he brought me over and he blasted me, like spit in my face. It was like a tornado of yelling just came at me. And he set the tone in his school that you were never allowed to show it. And that sat with me.
And you were 16, 17, you were saying at that time?
Yeah. And I had other coaches, like tell me, don't do that. It's wrong. It's this and that. But when you're a hormonal, emotional teenager and you're like,
that's right,
life itself is difficult, let alone trying to, achieve the best in the world at something. It's very, very, very difficult. And I was a late bloomer. I can't imagine what some of these phenoms feel when they don't even know who they are, what they're doing, and they're in the public eye and everyone's hoping they're the best in the world. It's crazy. Yeah. Absolute craziness. But it did something to me. Like I just instantly went, oh, yeah, no, that makes sense. And I parked it. That was it.
Yeah. I mean, because whatever his tone was, I think the message was that, listen, that it's not acceptable. And you're like, well, you know what? I want to be the best in the world. And his words make sense right now. So I better, pick up my game and just kind of... Right.
Well, I mean, I think you got to be responsible for the energy you bring into a space. That's and right. if you have a training environment and you train with the same people day in and day out, and for us, 99% of let's say 95% of what we do is training. Mm-hmm. It's all preparation. So if our training environment is crap, it's going to be really hard to thrive in it. Vice versa, if our training environment is healthy and thriving, people will get better, and it'll help you too. You feel uplifted, you feel excited to step into that space and to practice achieving your goals. And positivity breeds positivity.
Yeah. And this is where in tennis it's a little bit, there's a lot of similarities what you're saying. Obviously we want our athletes and younger athletes to behave and to make sure they present themselves in a professional way, and I know Sharon is super she puts a lot of emphasis on it when she was traveling with as you know, she was traveling with Tennis Canada as a coach, and she would be very, very strict in terms of how her players would behave on the court. And
we're representing your country, right?
That's right, representing your country, representing yourself, representing me as a coach. So it's all about that representation. And I really like that about how she was dealing with that. But my point is, a lot of coaches, obviously they have different opinion, and tennis being that sport where you have a lot of time, where you can, some coaches, I'll just get it right into it. So some coaches would say, you know what, you want to throw your racket, if you can regroup for the next point. So they're not they're not restricting their player to show their emotion, if they're mature enough to handle that, So, and I'm not exactly, there's some kids that I'm like, you know what, it makes sense for this kid. But of course, I don't want my player to to behave like a douche on the court and just throw rackets and whining, especially in a group environment, because that ruins dynamic instantly.
Oh, you suck the energy out of the place.
Exactly,
it's gone.
Like, it's crazy how fast it can go downhill. Like, the second somebody starts like losing that presence, that professional presence, it's gone. Boom, done. Yep. And it's hard to get.
I've witnessed it, and I've caused it before too. I've seen it. I struggled a bit in the last couple of years of my career. I had some difficulties, and I started to struggle with controlling it, which really re-emphasized for me, looking back on my career, just how important it is, because it did affect, not just that it was only me, but it really does affect your overall experience and outcome. And I understand the sentiment that, like, at the end of the day, the most important thing is your performance, but you're, as a coach and as an athlete, you're building a person. Yeah. And sport, and Sharon always says this, sport doesn't just develop character, it reveals it. And I think we all have tendencies, we all have certain things about us that make us us, good and bad. And that's what makes us unique, and it's the beautiful thing about being human. But when you make it okay to stop bettering yourself, I disagree with that personally. Yeah. I think, there are other ways to vent your anger. If holding it in is a bad thing, take a deep breath. It's scientifically proven to lower your heart rate and clear your mind, and to bring your system down a couple gears back into a neutral gear where you can see things. The stress reaction, the stress hormone, creates. It was an instinctual evolutionary thing for survival. When we knew we were in danger, the stress hormone goes up, our heart rate spikes to get us prepared to, like, move and handle situations, either run or handle or fight, whatever, fight or flight. You start losing fine motor skills, your vision starts tunneling because you become focused on one thing. You're not able to see clearly, you're not able to think clearly. It's not, when you're living in the jungle, it's get away or, like, kill whatever's trying to kill you. But a technical sport like tennis, it's a game of chess while running around, right? And hitting a moving object. That's and how do you think on your feet if your emotions are so powerful that it's literally taking energy away from your computer? It's like putting a brick on the gas pedal and letting go of the steering wheel. Like,
yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, I'm not saying let's start throwing rackets.
No.
But it's just different perspectives, and I totally get where you're coming from.
And those are details.
Yeah, that's
those are details on the general kind of topic that I'm talking about. Yeah. I think if a person does better by venting their energy, help them find a way to do it in a less explosive manner, and there's reasons that you get point violations if you behave that way, because they don't want it to happen.
That's right. Yeah, that makes sense. I just remember that one time I was watching Roland Garros match a couple years back, Djokovic against Gulbis. Ernest Gulbis being at that time, I don't remember exact ranking, but top 30, I would say. And Djokovic won the first set 6-3. Gulbis, or something like that, Gulbis just smashes, like, destroys his racket, wins the next set, like 6-4 or 6-3, So it's like, what was it the right thing to do? I don't know. Maybe was that the reason he won the set? I don't know. Maybe, but it just, I guess it comes back to self-awareness, and it takes really mature athlete to understand, okay, you know what, this is good for me, and this is how I roll, and this is just helping me a lot. Don't even try to take that away from me.
Yeah.
And but of course, when I'm working with the kid, I personally, it drives me nuts when they try to express their emotions in like destructive way to themselves and to the training environment there.
Especially if you're not sponsored by a racket company. Now what do you do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's an expensive temper tantrum.
Exactly.
I don't know. I think it's up to coaches to educate themselves on why this happens and the mentality, especially with youth.
Yeah.
And you know, talk to experts. Find ways around it. Yeah. Have some punching, you know, boxing gloves and focus mitts beside the court.
Yeah.
And if a kid's like really reacting, stop. Don't hit the racket. Put your gloves on. Let's punch some things.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like just find ways to like gradually pull it back. And then each time they'll get better at it. You know what I mean? I don't know. Whatever works. Stress balls, bite your towel, scream into it, whatever.
Yeah.
But I just think understanding people's challenges, because we all have them.
That's right.
And finding ways to gain control over them instead of them gaining control over you is the most important aspect of that topic, I think.
Yeah. And since we started talking a little bit about the juniors and, you know, the development of an athlete, so you're coaching a little bit as well, the younger skaters. So how do you like that? And what do you notice you're doing as a coach? You know, how does it feel being on the other side?
Well, I'm not doing the day in and day out. I did coach throughout my career on and off. Probably about 8 years before I retired, I started coaching. And I think coaching is a great way for you to understand if you really know what you're talking about or not, because if you can't explain it, you don't really understand it. And also it gives you insight as to watching someone else behave or react or handle situations. And if you see them act the way that you know you are acting, it instantly you go, oh, okay. So you learn about yourself at the same time. Now as a coach, you know, it took a bit of time when I first stopped for me to be able to watch and not connect it to my own skating career. It's hard to do, but now as just a consultant coach, working with Skate Canada and Skate Ontario, I'm trying to help build new pair teams, and I do TV commentary. It's interesting for me being out of the sport for, you know, over a year now, and just having my knowledge and memories and experience to draw from, not my, I just did this 2 hours ago. Yeah. I have, in some ways more patience and in some ways less. I see, as a skater and as a person, I always try and see the big picture. I think working towards a goal is like a giant puzzle, and each day is one puzzle piece. Even if it's just a blue piece and it's part of the ocean, it's part of that picture and it's important. And I think treating that day like a puzzle piece, understanding that you're working towards a major big goal, keeps perspective. And so as a coach, I think that's important too, because we have our own pride, we have our own egos, and we have our own ambitions as coaches, and even our own projected ambitions for that player and what we think they can achieve versus what they believe at that time in their life or their career. And I think understanding process and understanding development and just having that mindset of perspective and progress and patience enables you to help that person more. And I've noticed that when you want something done perfectly and you want it done right away, you yourself have to take a step back and go, am I helping them now, or am I just frustrated because it's not happening the way I want it?
That's right. And this is so tough for me as well, because, you know, like you just nail it. Like when you said that's like you have your own version of how you want things done and your own vision of that player's future, but it's not about you as a coach.
It's not.
You know? And I obviously I understand that, but sometimes in the moment when you're in that drill and you're like, no, you can do better, and then no, it's like, damn, you know, it's not like, maybe it's time to take it easy and let's like.
The flip side is you can't be a high level competitive coach in any sport without that in you.
Yes.
because you just won't care.
Exactly.
You'll just allow them to get away with anything,
exactly.
right? It's
that
like, okay, that was mediocre, whatever.
Yeah.
If you want it, you'll figure it out. That doesn't work. You be a recreational coach and enjoy your time out on the court or whatever you're doing.
Just
right?
have to maintain that balance, man.
It is. I mean, life is about balance, everything. So if you can apply that to coaching the same way you apply it to performing, and you are able to find a synchronicity with your player and understand who they are and what they need, and you're able to communicate it with them in a way that they understand who you are and what you need, you can arrive at a common goal and work towards it together. I really believe that everything is teamwork. And, I think different cultures have different views, and some of it is old school. It's fear-based. It's about pushing. It's about, you don't have a say. You don't need to know why. And I believe it works to a certain point. I think you can accelerate an athlete fast based on punishing them, putting pressure on them, threats, not necessarily with violence, but threats like ultimatums or
if you don't do this, we're gonna go do suicide.
Yes. And some of that is very important because it teaches them. You know what I mean? And I think pressure makes diamonds. It's very important. I don't think we should breed a soft culture of athletes. But I also believe that last 20% of an athlete's full potential has to come from them. Yeah. You can't force it out of someone, because that gear is an internal gear. It has to come from a self-drive that is deep within them, and they have to decide it. It's a choice. And if you don't build an athlete from the ground up by empowering them as well as pushing them and having them, you got to hold them accountable. They have to learn tough lessons. Yeah. It's one of the most important things about being an athlete. But if you can build them from the ground up so that you instill confidence and you instill belief in themselves when they get to those moments, because at the top end of sport, you work 10 times as hard for 10% of the increment. Yeah. Like look at runners or speed skaters where it's time measured.
They're shaving like
milliseconds.
Exactly.
And how much work goes into that millisecond is incredible. If you take that and put that in an average person's workout,
that's right,
they're going to shave off a minute.
Yeah.
Right. And so that last gear has to come from them. And if you don't teach them how to find that gear, they'll never find it, because they're going to rely on external sources, and it's going to be, they're not going to be able to understand what it took to get there.
Yeah. You're so right. And, throughout this discussion today, we talked about so many things, and you brought up enormous amount of value and so many great insights.
Thanks,
and
man.
No, for sure. I mean it. And I know that you were thinking about starting your own show.
Yeah. I'd like to.
Maybe you can elaborate on that.
Yeah. It's I only thought about this a couple of weeks ago, but there's YouTube.
Yeah.
I have a camera. I have things to say.
Exactly.
I feel very passionately about what makes an athlete's mind thrive. How does an athlete use what in between their ears to make themselves great or not great? And some of the best athletes in history were not the ones you thought would be there. And I find it so fascinating, the day in and day out, and also those big moments as to why. And I love talking about it. And I've been very fortunate enough to have some great experiences in my career that have also introduced me to some incredible athletes throughout my career in figure skating and throughout the the Olympic sport network, and also in tennis, which is one of my favorite sports. And I'm hoping to get it going, and I'd love to bring insight from some of the specialists that I work with on sports psychology, on brain neurology, and understanding the thought process side, but also the actual physical science side of the brain and what happens and why, and relate it to my experiences and to others' experiences. So hopefully I can get that up and running. I'd love to have you on it too.
Oh man, I would love to come. I mean, definitely in this day and age, there is no such thing as too many podcasts, and coming from you is definitely going to be with a lot of value, and I will promote it as much as I can, because
I appreciate that. I hope I don't run out of things to say.
No, for sure. Because
I used them all today. It's it.
I mean,
you stole it all. It's done. I'm empty.
But seriously, it's like, especially with your network of the guests that you can invite, and the I love these things. Like, I listen to so many podcasts, and people have a lot of things to say, and you can draw value, like we were talking, from everybody, you know, from writers, from doctors, from, you know, filmmakers. One of the most fascinating podcasts I listened to was from that famous mountain climber, the free solo, Alex Honnold.
Unbelievable. I've been listening to the podcast. The documentary film was incredible.
Another level. Like when he was describing the precision of every single move, like he has a diary and he had to. That's when I was thinking. Instead of bringing up that Nike commercial example, I was thinking about bringing him, because he was saying how he has to, you know, like, okay, that climb, like left hand goes here, left leg, right leg, turn here, jump, well, not jump, but like whatever he was saying. It's the level of detail, and I mean, it would make sense.
It's life or death.
It's life or death, literally.
And it is the perfect ultimate example of performing under stress. As athletes, sometimes we feel like failure is death. You know, it means so much to us that we don't want to live if it doesn't happen. I remember they did a poll years ago. They asked a bunch of Olympic athletes, because like for us, the Olympics is just, that's it. It's your reason for existing.
That's right.
They asked them if you could be guaranteed an Olympic gold medal, but that you would die like shortly after, would you do it? And more than 50% said yes.
Really?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
So if you relate that to what this guy did, and you have to be that meticulous to do what he did. There's a reason he's the only person that's ever done it.
Exactly.
It's because he's so detail oriented.
Yeah.
Like every cell in his body knew what was happening.
Yeah. And the amount of like ups and downs, like meaning like how many runs he had to repetition.
But like each repetition is more stressful than, you know, like the finals at Wimbledon, because you can die at almost any given time.
That's right.
And relatively speaking, I've never competed at Wimbledon in the finals, but like, just if you can kind of conceptualize it, if you were able to watch what that guy did and his ability to stay in like the complete present moment, it's the epitome of Zen. You know, he was in a form of meditation where his mind and his body were completely present with his task, and everything else, his fears, his doubts, his potential outcomes, they were all givens, and they were just put away in a bag, and that was it.
It was that performance of a lifetime, like you were saying, one of those.
Yeah,
definitely.
And it could have easily been the end of his lifetime.
That's true, because if you think about it, the more you do of those climbing up, climbing down, the more you think, I got this. I mean, for sure, like he had those thoughts, like, you know, like, you know, like this mountain inside and out, like, you know, every single turn, and that gives you confidence and, God forbid, overconfidence, you know?
Yeah, I think a climb like that, I don't think he could ever do it again, because if he did it again, he might be comparing it to what happened before. He might be overconfident. He might be overthinking because he's overconfident. Like, it was like the perfect balance of preparation and in the moment and fear. That level of fear, he used it, he harnaced it, and it was just like a perfect storm, right?
Yeah, I'm sure she's planning a next climb, like a next impossible climb. Those guys never stop. I mean, it's something in them that.
Well, in the documentary film, they talked about how his brain doesn't have as much fear factor, right? Yeah. So he needs that adrenaline boost to feel like half of what we feel.
Exactly. Dylan, what are you up to just in your life in terms of? I know you're very busy. I'm looking at your stories. You're doing like interviews.
Man, Instagram life isn't. Yeah, you know, I'm still shifting and recalibrating after 28 years of competing in figure skating. So I kind of in some ways removed myself from the sport to a certain extent. I coach a bit on the side, and I teach power skating, which is something that has actually started taking off for me. I really enjoy it. I'd like to start working with some high level teams. I think I have something to offer. I played hockey growing up, and I understand the mechanics of skating, and I understand enough the mechanics of hockey that I can kind of be a translator between the two. But I'm mostly focused on acting. It's kind of like my new skating. It's something I'm passionate about. I realized maybe 6 years ago that I wanted to act. And then the last 4 years of my career, I was in and out. I studied entrepreneurship. I studied business. I wasn't really sure I was going to do it. And then within a year or two before retiring, I was like, you know what? I want to give this a shot. So the second I started doing acting classes, and I've been studying hard. Was in a Netflix series recently that's not out yet, Spinning Out. It's a series about skating, ironically.
That's awesome.
Right place, right time for me, but I was a skating double.
When is it coming out?
I don't know yet, but it was a great experience. Really strong cast.
Right, I remember you when you showed up at the Snakes and Ladders the other night. I mean, not the other night, but a couple months ago. You had to dye your hair or something?
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah, because I was skating doubling for the lead actor. He's as a pair skater, and so I started out as a consultant for the show, ended up stunt doubling. They gave me a small role as a coach on the show,
and they're like, "Screw that guy! Let's let's have Dylan do that the whole thing."
Oh, I wish that would have been awesome. No, but the actor Evan was amazing. He did a great job. He was a hockey player, so he learned to skate in figure skates, and I helped coach him a bit at the beginning, and he was good. It was great. There was some great names, some big acting names in there. The writing was great, and the directors were phenomenal.
That's amazing.
It was kind of like jumping into the big leagues really early, and I got a good taste for things very early on in my career, and it enabled me to become a member of the ACTRA union, and so it definitely helped further my career a bit. But I'm pushing. I'm networking. I'm learning from people.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. It's fun. It's a ride. I went from a judge sport that was quite unforgiving to a much more unforgiving situation. It's you don't even get a score. Yeah. You just don't hear back.
You just perform.
It's like being ghosted all the time, right? It's like failing at Tinder.
Yeah.
It's bizarre, and it was right off the bat very humbling coming from the top level of a sport and being in some of these commercial auditions where you're like a prop and like you're silent on camera and you have to jump around and clap or behave like dad or fake ride a bicycle and talk to imaginary people in front of a room full of people judging. It's weird.
Yeah, it's weird, but it's definitely fun for sure.
It is. It's like sport in a lot of ways. My body hurts less. That's probably the biggest difference.
You don't have to be on the blade most of the time. Unless
you end up in a skating show. Yeah.
Okay, Dylan. Well, honestly, it's been a blast. Honestly, I've had so much fun talking to you, and I really appreciate you coming here.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thanks for having me.
I learned a lot, and I'm sure whoever watched this episode learned too. And wow, what an episode! What a show!
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I'm pumped for my tennis career to get going now.
Yeah. Well, when we're gonna record part 2, maybe we'll talk about
when
that.
I get bionic limbs.
That's right.
Maybe there's masters tournaments. There's older age tournaments, right?
Yeah. Okay. We can figure things out.
Yeah.
Maybe mixed doubles with Sharon.
Oh yeah, I'm sure she'll be all about that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll probably need to find another doubles partner.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah. Dude.
Yeah, it was good.